So I'm guessing like all of you are new to debate. Am I correct in saying that? No, I'm seeing a head shake. Can you explain like what
Me?
experience? Yeah.
I've done debate since freshman year of high school, and I'm a senior now
Oh, okay. Have you like policy debate?
in Kansas. So very
Oh, okay.
different. But yeah, policy debate.
Okay, sweet. Okay, so that's good. That's good to hear. Um, can I share my screen on this? Yes, I can. Oh wait, no. It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Here, I'll make you the
Yeah,
person.
no worries.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, is it working?
Yes, working.
Okay, cool. So before we talk about like politics disads or whatever, elections, I just wanted to like talk about disads in general because I feel like that's better than talking about something you don't know. So have you all like covered disads like up until now in LOUDwomen or no?
Yeah, we did a basic like rundown of them, but yeah.
Okay, cool. One sec. Okay, so disads. This is just like a short presentation. So this is an interesting way to think about disads. Disadvantages are arguments run by the negative against the affirmative in a policy round. The main goal of disadvantages is that they outweigh the affirmative. So the impact to the disad, basically like usually like something along the lines of extinction caused by a specific impact scenario, it's used to outweigh the affirmative. And because it outweighs the affirmative, you should vote neg. It's like the basic. But if you think of them like pizza, there are a variety of disadvantages. There's different types of them. You have to constantly update them with the evidence that you research. So they can be good like this week, but then in 2 weeks they may not, like you may not be able to use them because of the type of disad that they are. So, but like generally, like even in lay, if you have like a lay judge that doesn't really know what's happening, you can generally use a disadvantage in a round. So that's why they're good. But you have to like, I've learned that like debating the particularities of the evidence is much more important within a disadvantage than just like reading evidence. So you need to understand the evidence first. You need to understand like what the point of the disadvantage is, and then you can research specific parts of it. So yeah, so these are like the basics of a disad. There's 4 parts: uniqueness, link, internal link, impact. I'm sure you all have covered this already, but this is told through images, so it's more interesting. So uniqueness is basically what the status quo is, and status quo just means like in the present day, what is the reality of the situation. So it can be as simple as like Donald Trump is winning the election now. That is a statement of uniqueness, right? It's like a claim based on evidence, just about like the situation. It's not really making an argument. It just says what the argument is. So that'd be like up high. Then you have the link. The link is how the affirmative team changes the situation. So in the uniqueness, we've already identified that something is happening. So let's say Donald Trump is winning now. That is what the present state of the world is. The link is how the affirmative team changes the present state of the situation. So an example of a link going on with this example would be like the plan causes Donald Trump to win, specifically like the affirmative team. So link, like you can think of it literally, like the word link is the relationship between two things, right? So in the context of debate, a link is just the relationship between the affirmative team and the disadvantage. So you have to be able to draw a comparison and like a dot between the affirmative team and the disad. There has to be a link, and that's what this is. The internal link is when the victim misses. So the internal link is what happens when like it's the effect of the link. So the uniqueness was that Donald Trump is winning the election. The link was that the affirmative team Donald Trump is losing the election. The link is that the affirmative team causes Donald Trump to win the election. The internal link asks, what is the effect of that? Like, who cares? Like, why does it matter? So the internal link would be like, okay, well, if Donald Trump wins, that would be bad for the environment. And like, you would have to find evidence that says, that's just an example, but you would have to find evidence or give reasons as to why Donald Trump winning the election would be bad. And I'm sure you can research numerous examples of why that's bad. But the internal link is basically like, the link happens, what is the effect of that? And then lastly, we have the impact. So this is pretty self-explanatory, like internal link, Donald Trump wins and he rolls back EPA reforms. The impact is like, what is the impact of that? Like climate change is bad, that would be the impact. So if you think of a disad in 4 parts, it's much easier than just thinking about it as one argument, because you can break down each individual argument. So again, uniqueness, what is happening now? Link, how does the affirmative team change what is happening now? Internal link, what is the effect of that change? And impact, what is the effect of that happening on the entire world? And that is used to outweigh the affirmative. Some like specific notes about uniqueness. So uniqueness deals with newness, right? So if you're saying that, if your argument with the uniqueness is that Donald Trump is losing now, you have to be able to find evidence that is the most up-to-date and recent to be able to win that argument. Because if the negative presents evidence about Donald Trump winning, that's from 2 months ago, then it's not relevant enough. So it's not like very trustworthy. The affirmative team could present evidence that's much newer and much more contextualized to the current political climate, and like they could easily win. So newness is relative. It depends on events and information. You have to constantly research and update your evidence. And quantifiability is good. So the evidence that you do research should be specific. It should have what we call warrants in debate. So you should have reasons why the claim is true. So you can't just say like Donald Trump is winning and then, or Donald Trump is losing and then not provide any evidence why that's true. You have to provide statistics. So like if you have an article that has polls as to how Donald Trump is losing, that's much better than just a journalist writing that Donald Trump is losing now, right? So quantifiability is good. Polls are good. Statistics, all of those are good. Research studies are good. So don't just think about like qualitatively, what is the argument? You need to also think about how can I quantify that to where, sorry, my mail does this all the time. Quantifiability is good. Like how can I quantify that to make sure that that it's backed up by like actual statistics and information. Links, the more specific, the better. So like an example of this is the topic. So the topic this year is criminal justice reform. And so the link, so if the uniqueness is that Donald Trump is losing, the link would be the AF has to like somehow reform criminal justice, right? Like they have to pass a policy that affects criminal justice policy. Okay. The link should be about how criminal justice policy, if Trump passes it, would affect his ability to win the election, right? It can't just be like about something not related to the AF. Again, remember that a link is the relationship between two things. So you need to be able to form a concrete relationship between whatever the AF is saying and whatever the disad is about. If the disad is about like the election disad, then you need to have specific evidence that says that if Trump passed criminal justice reform, that it would boost his popularity, which is probably true. So specific links are better than non-specific links. Because if you have a non-specific link, the AF team can just come up and say, well, none of your evidence is about the AF. It's about criminal justice reform in general. So if the AF is something specific like sentencing or policing or like prison sentences at large, but the negatives link is just about criminal justice reform in general, the AF could just say, well, our AF is about sentencing. It's not just about CJR. Like a specific link is much better than just a generic one. Empirics are also good. So empirically, like the word empirical just means like data that has been, that like examples that you can use of past instances of where this is true. So for example, if a president has used CJR as a means of raising their popularity in the past, and you have evidence that says that this is true, you can use that, and it's good because it dictates like a pattern, right? So for example, if Obama did this and he passed like, whenever he passed criminal justice reform, his popularity shot up, you can use that as evidence as to why, well, if Donald Trump did it, the same would probably happen. So links should be specific and empirics are good. Internal links. So what is the effect of if Donald Trump's popularity rose, right? You need to have a specific path by which the disadvantage is taking. It can't just be like, oh, well, Trump gets popular, that's bad. It should be Trump gets popular, but that's bad for XYZ reason. So for example, like the example I gave before, if Trump wins, then he would roll back EPA regulations. That's a specific instance of Trump doing harm, which is better than just saying like Trump gets reelected, that's bad. So it needs to align with your impact. If the impact is climate change, the internal link should be something about climate change. In this case, Trump rolling back EPA regulations. Newness is also relevant here. Most up-to-date information is always good, and evidence should be debated based on how new it is generally. Impact, it's like bigger the better, more specific the better. Qualifications matter. Yeah. Uniqueness, so like uniqueness on the impact debate is like climate change, for example. If you say climate change is bad and that it'll cause extinction, the AF could say, well, the uniqueness of climate change is distinct. So like there's a bunch of arguments that are like, oh, well, it's past the tipping point, which means that climate change, like it's too late to solve climate change, essentially. So uniqueness does matter on the impact level, because if your impact has already happened, then there's no point in reading it, right? Like if climate change has already caused extinction, then you wouldn't say climate change will cause extinction. So your impact should be new, it should be up to date. Your actual evidence that you read should be up to date. And like the better the qualifications are of the author, the more likely it is to occur, right? Like you wouldn't use an article by, I don't even know, like by CNN or something to cut like an impact card about climate change. Probably not, because CNN probably isn't the most reputable source. Like they're probably not full of scientists, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to be able to research good sources. So like maybe a science journal would be a better source of information than CNN in this case. So this is just in general, but like whenever you're debating evidence, you should always debate evidence that's the most qualified, and you should point out whenever it's not, whenever the other team does it. So if the other team has evidence that's garbage, which they probably will, because we're talking about politics disads, and most disadvantages are not good. There's like very clear logical flaws within most of them, all of them. The evidence is usually complete crap. So as a debater, you should be able to read their evidence and like logically think through it, and you can make like logical arguments. You don't have to have cards on cards or like piece of evidence. You can say like logically, this isn't true because the author has no experience writing about climate change, or this isn't true because there's no polls to back it up, right? You can make logical arguments in debate. You don't always need pieces of evidence. Okay, so disadvantages in the context of like politics or the election. Wait, so first of all, do you all have any like questions before I go on? Okay, cool, because this can be confusing, and especially if you have never like learned about debate. So elections. So each year, for each election year, there is a disadvantage that people run called the elections disad. And the premise of the disad is this on the left. So the uniqueness is that X candidate is winning. Okay, so let's say that in this instance, Donald Trump is winning. The link is about the app. So like this is from last year. Last year the topic was arms sales. This year it would be CJR, criminal justice reform. So the link, criminal justice reform shifts public support. Okay, so if Donald Trump is winning, and then the link is about CJR, how criminal justice reform causes his popularity to rise, therefore there's an increased chance of him winning. Okay, the internal link, public support key to winning the election. Pretty simple. Since CJR has increased his popularity, it will help him win the election. Okay, so here's where you can like make a choice with these disads. There's two routes to go about it. If Donald Trump is winning now, and the AF causes Donald Trump to lose, you would need a reason why that's bad. So you would, so like two scenarios. One, Donald Trump wins and the plan causes Donald Trump to lose. Then you would have to argue on the impact scenario that Donald Trump is good for XYZ reason. Flip that. If Donald Trump is losing now and the plan causes Donald Trump to win, then on the impact scenario, if Donald Trump wins, you would have to argue why Donald Trump winning is bad. So does that make sense? Okay. There's like two routes to go about it. And really, it just depends upon the evidence, right? Like in this instance, you would probably argue that Donald Trump is bad because there's more evidence that says he's bad. It's probably also just true on a logical level. And the judge is more likely to buy it unless you have like a lay judge or something, in which case you would have to rethink your strategy. So two ways of going about it, but that's like basically the argument. You can do this with any candidate, but most often it's used with like presidential candidates because they hold a lot of political clout and they have power. But there's also agenda disads. So election disads deal with people, agenda disads deal with bills. So again, two ways to go about it. The uniqueness, let's say X bill is passing. So there's actually an example of this that I can give. Okay, can you guys still see my screen? You guys see like the blue? Okay, cool. Okay, this is an example of a agenda disad. So this might like look like a lot, but just like try to focus on whatever I highlight with my cursor. So there's like a bill, right? There's this bill called USMCA, yeah. Okay, this bill is about food security. It provides food security, it invests billions of dollars into renewable energy. It does a lot of good things. Okay, so the uniqueness in this case would be food bill passes now. Okay, that's the uniqueness, that the USMCA passes now. The link would be that that CJR causes fights between Democrats and Republicans. So, also in the uniqueness, you would establish that USMCA is a bipartisan bill. So USMCA is bipartisan, meaning that both Republicans and Democrats support it. They're working together to pass it. The link is that CJR causes fights. It's unpopular. So Republicans and Democrats would fight over it. That means that there would be no political support to pass USMCA, right? Because if Democrats and Republicans are fighting over the plan, which is about criminal justice reform, and you have evidence that says that CJR is unpopular and causes fights, then the food bill wouldn't pass. Okay, so the food bill doesn't pass. The impact is then food bill good, right? Food bill good for climate change or food security, whatever. So that would be an example of an agenda disad. On the other hand, you can do it to where X bill is not passing. So let's say the food bill is not passing. The link is that CJR causes Republicans and Democrats to like actually work together. So if the bill is not passing and they work together, the bill passes. But here in the impact scenario, you would argue that the bill is bad, because if the bill passes, the impact has to somehow like implicate the affirmative team. So again, there's two routes of going about it here. Like the elections decide, you can either say it's passing and it's good, or it's not passing and it's bad. And again, just depends on the evidence. Like most teams will run one version of this, but these are the most common. These are what we call politics disads. And they're disadvantages that have to do with real world events like bills, elections, agenda politics, stuff like that. The evidence is usually really crappy. Like politics disads, yeah, the evidence is usually not good. So as a debater, you have to, like, when you're in round, your first priority should be to read the other team's evidence and then critique it, like find reasons why it's bad, which is not hard to do. Yeah, does all of this make sense? Okay, cool. Any like questions? Okay, cool. These are just like, I'll go through some of these. Others are a little like complicated, I guess. Like they're just really weird. But like generic things about disads, use cross-ex to your advantage. So if you're the AF team and you know that the evidence is crappy, it's just not good, then you can use cross-ex or cross-examination to ask questions to the other team about their own evidence, right? So you should use this to your advantage. If in cross-ex you can ask them questions about like, what are the credentials of this author, or why would Donald Trump be winning if the evidence has no polls in it, right? Like these are logical questions that you can ask. You should use that to your advantage. You can implicate the other team in cross-ex. And if the judge sees that, then they're more likely to like vote for you or like be more favorable towards your argument, because they're seeing that you're pointing holes in the other team's argument. So use cross-ex to your advantage. Conversely, avoid cross-ex like the plague. If you're the neg team, you should try putting the disad, if it has crappy evidence, in the rebuttal speech, because there's no cross-ex after the rebuttal speech. Smart, right? Like you don't have to, they can't answer, like they can't ask you questions because it's in the 1NR, which is the first negative rebuttal. Whereas if you put it in a constructive speech, then they can ask you questions. And if you know your evidence is crap, then don't do that. Okay, the second bullet point, your arguments can't always be better, but they can be greater. So basically in debate, we call this a card dump. It's basically where like you just read a ton of evidence. Like in the next speech, so like the 1AC just reads their AF. Like they're like, okay, we need to reform CJR. The 1NC reads the dissent. So let's say the elections dissent. The 2AC responds to whatever, right? Makes their own arguments. The 2NC, this is called the card dump that you can do. Essentially, you just read a boatload of evidence on the dissad that kind of, it puts a lot of pressure on the AF team because they have to respond to a lot of evidence. So let's say you're in a debate where you don't really have a coherent strategy against the other team. You don't really know what arguments you're going for or how this debate's going to end up. You don't really have that much of round vision going into it. Maybe you don't even know what their case is, et cetera, et cetera. Politics disads, you can always go for them, right? Like you can always read these disads. You can always prep them, which is why they're good. Conversely, they're bad because the evidence is bad. However, if you read a ton of evidence, then they have to respond to it. And if they're not good at responding to it, then you can still win. So, yeah, like you can read a ton of arguments, and if they don't respond to it, then GG. Like you can use that to your advantage. So just because the evidence is crap doesn't mean that you can't go for it or win on it, but that you should be cognizant of the fact that it's crap. Probably know that. Yeah, I'm not gonna do the other ones because they're kind of weird, but like, yeah, use cross-examination, ask good questions, and read a ton of arguments if you can, if you want to, if you're losing and there's no other way out. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna do this. Questions? No. Okay, cool. Are you sure? Do you understand what a disad is? Okay, cool. Um, yeah, like elections and agenda, they're just like specific forms of them, but as long as you know what a disad is, like the four parts of it, uh, then you can just learn the other types later. Yeah, I think that was all I had. Um, yeah, pretty basic presentation
That was
on
good.
disads, I guess.